Okay, so tell me a little bit about, Cheers Consulting and how it got started.
Wonderful. Hi, everybody. My name is Britt Otter. I use she and her pronouns, and Cheers Consulting and Coaching got started a few years ago. I've been in higher education, working in disability services, access and inclusion, for 12 plus years now. I am a person with multiple disabilities, and I've been working with lots and lots of students who keep coming back to me saying, gosh, the accommodation process is really difficult to navigate. The college process is difficult to navigate. And I really wish the school would provide some kind of academic coaching, executive functioning support. And a lot of parents would call me and say, could someone just walk me through this process, help me through this process? I'm going from a system in high school K through 12 where I was able to be with my kiddo, if they were involved in the accommodation process, and I was able to advocate with them. And now I can't even call the school and
Hmm.
talk to anybody because of privacy laws, as adults. So, what am I supposed to do? What's my role as a parent now? And just in listening to parents and family members being frustrated and trying to figure out what to do and how to support their kids going off to school, especially first generation students with disabilities, and their family members trying to support them while also really not knowing how the school calendar works and what's a credit, what does it mean to study, what's an effective study strategy, where to go to for support, who they can talk to, and what they can talk about with people. Um, I was like, what would be really helpful is to create a space where we can have conversations, and those things don't apply. So I decided to create Cheers to coach individuals with disabilities, students and adults, but also parents and family members, to provide that support and that networking.
hmm So that was my next question. Like, what sorts of services do you provide at Cheers Consulting? Like, how do you make sure that, people with disabilities, are independent and self-sufficient as possible?
Wonderful question, Laszlo. So I like to um, think about um, independence, a lot like Judy Heuermann, rest in peace, would think about independence, which is, independent living is not doing things by yourself. Rather, it's being in control of how things are done. Most people I know, in fact, I don't think I can think of anyone who has ever gone through life not needing help at some point in some way, right? That doesn't mean we're not independent. It just means we need a little help to get by, right? We need a little support, maybe some strategies, maybe some accommodations, maybe some social support, emotional support to work through whatever in life is going on. And so, my really goal is to really assist my clients with disabilities in identifying what they want, who they want it from, and how they want it to be done. And with coaching, I can really be that guide, have them lead the way, and I'm really partnering with them as an ally or really an accomplice, to take a page from Black Lives Matter, to really assist in that process of development, learning, and also transformation, to take some risks too, right? If I'm not in there willing to take risks, why should they trust me? In my work with students, this means that are my individual coaching sessions are just with the student or the individual with a disability, so that we can have that one-on-one conversation and they get their own space. We do student and um, disability group support sessions to have like a dedicated space for support and affinity. And then also, having some space to then support family members and parents who may be disabled and may not be disabled, having that additional support and information and resource gathering.
Hmm.
So to then kind of go into the resources and services that I offer, my number one utilized service is academic coaching and executive functioning support. What I mean by that is, executive functioning covers a whole lot of things, covers emotional regulation, time management, organization. We are kind of managed, executive managed, like a CEO in our brain, right in the prefrontal cortex, by our executive function. So when we talk as a coaching team, one on one, we explore what's possible. We explore the challenges that we experience, how to test tolerance for change, for difficulty. We develop strategies for learning that work with individuals' learning styles, that leverage their abilities and their experiences with their disabilities. And there's ways to respond to those functional limitations that are effective. So, for example, in addition to time management, which is one of the big ones that people come to me for, also trying to identify like various relationship styles and types and interactions, self-advocacy, crisis tolerance, organization, note-taking, how to read an academic textbook for comprehension and fluency, and so much more. I also do accommodation consultations. That's useful for folks who are having difficulty navigating high school or collegiate accommodations processes, or just the bureaucracy of it all, and would like some advice or suggestions about potential accommodations to request, how to request them, and ways to advocate for their needs that are effective, and will get them heard. So that's the services for the student or individual. And then for parents, guardians, and all the support network folks, we do parent and family support groups where parents, family members, support network come together and discuss challenges, discuss and celebrate successes, share strategies, develop real tangible like tools they can use in their tool belt for supporting their loved ones with disabilities during the lifespan, during the time that they're needing to support them at that moment. And then individual parent and family coaching are also offered, which are individualized sessions for folks who need more direct ongoing support, establishing, maintaining boundaries, effective communication, maybe some ongoing disability awareness, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then further, bigger picture, I work with schools, colleges, and organizations to provide workshops, webinars, and information about digital accessibility compliance, so that they can have just overall knowledge and awareness about disability and accessibility, talk about disability history, language, theory, all that fun stuff. So I know that was a lot, but I'm really passionate about what I do, and I love working with my students and my folks. So
Mm-hmm. Oh no, that's some good stuff. My next question here is, are there any particular stakeholders that you partner with closely? I know that you talked about the students and the parents, like.
yeah, absolutely. So stakeholders are folks who have a grand stake in the outcome, right? So when I think of stakeholders, yes, absolutely. Students are number one, parents and family members also. But in addition, I think of the folks who are most immediately going to impact the students or the individual's success and access to whatever it is that they're trying to get access to. And that most likely is going to be their 504 or IEP coordinators, their collegiate access coordinators or specialists or advisors, folks in human resources or ADA coordinators at like employers, sometimes local representatives or local agencies, calling them up, making a case, and even organizations that are local to provide awareness or even to provide education for folks who can't access a service that they really need to access. So it really can be whoever is in that person's network. We spend time identifying who are your circles, who's your network, the bubbles that you're around, and are those accessible to you, and who needs to know different things about how to make things accessible and supportive for you. So those are typically the stakeholders, and that's driven again by the individual I'm working with.
Mm-hmm. My next question is, what impact does your organization have on communities as a whole, particularly the disability community?
I'm really glad you asked. I can talk all day about what I think, but I really like to leave that to the folks I've worked with to explain and to provide their voice. Part of my job is to also elevate the voices of folks that I work with. And so I do have a couple of testimonials because I don't want to speak for anyone, but I would
Mm-hmm.
love to share some of their um, feedback if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so one person that I worked with was a university administrator in housing. They wanted some feedback on how to plan some more accessibility in their dining halls in housing, in building some new buildings and construction for physical accessibility and even for sensory accessibility. And so they said, quote, "Thank you for all that you are doing to support our on-campus students with their accommodation needs. I have often heard from university housing and residential dining staff how much they have appreciated your partnership and support. I know you are also managing a lot of other things with all CSU students, and I appreciate that work too. But I especially appreciate all that you do in partnership with HDS, Housing and Dining Services. Thank you." End quote. So that was an administrative perspective. Let's listen to some perspectives from the folks I've actually worked with individually, the students and folks with disabilities. One student who was a community college graduate with learning disabilities was actually an older gentleman. His name is James, and he gave me permission to share this quote from him. "You really can make things happen for the better, helping disabled students have a great experience in learning at CSU. You sure did it for me. I wouldn't be working in the job I'm doing now if it wasn't for you to point me in the right direction and getting my mind back on track." I was there to celebrate James's graduation, and he also got into the National Honor Society, and I was so excited for him. Lastly, I have a four-year university graduate who is on the autism spectrum. And also, I still keep in contact also today, just like with James. She says, quote, "Brittany Otter is truly an amazing and inspiring professional who encompasses many insights into the world of disabilities and higher education. She is dedicated to making a difference in the lives of students she serves and is a passionate advocate." End quote. So that's what they have to say about me so far. I also think that if I can just do one training, one webinar, really provide awareness to one person, I have an impact on all the people that that person will encounter um, and provide services with. And so the more that I can impact the more people, the better, is how I look at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but those are some really important testimonials. Really, really cool stuff. If I could
Thanks.
get to my last question here is, how does uh how does Cheers Consulting, create an inclusive and welcoming environment for everyone, not just people with disabilities, but the parents and everybody involved?
That's a really good question. Part of it is building that community. And I think community it's tough, right? It's an evolving iterative process. You can't just say you're going to have community and then it happens. It comes through trust and intention and communication and hearing everyone's needs and valuing them and showing that they matter and showing up for them over and over again, even when it's hard. So, some of the themes that have come out of doing that, um, that have been helpful in reinforcing some of these trusting relationships are one, keeping the work intersectional. I keep a lot from Sin's Invalid, which is a activist group that talks a lot about keeping the disabled movement intersectional. And not only should the work focus on disability and disability as an identity or an experience, but also on the many lived experiences, especially marginalized lived experiences of the people I work with, because also they come in tandem, right? So someone might be working through trying to get access to quality mental health care, not only as a disabled individual, but also dealing with, um, some cultural bias or stigma in their community. They also might be dealing with some, difficulty through socioeconomic class. That also might be something related to documentation and citizenship, right? And so there's a lot to have to think about when really focusing on the individual as a person and really holistically viewing the experience they're going through. And so when combating ableist systems, we often also are combating racism and sexism and transphobia and homophobia and classism and other such oppressive systems that work in tandem to keep our people in the shadows of society. They all work together. The second thing is adaptability is our life source. It's a huge value, I think, in the disabled community. Many, if not most, disabled folks I know and I work with are already royally good. They are just kings, queens, royalty at adapting to various situations. And that is a necessity that is born out of necessity because of inaccessible situations coming up, but it's also leveraging that skill, right? And saying, look what we can do. um, Number three is celebrating the small wins, even the smallest of the small. All
Mm-hmm.
wins, no matter what, are worth celebrating, especially if we're feeling down, if we're divided in ourselves, if we're feeling some cognitive dissonance. If we can celebrate something, if we can find some gratitude and we can celebrate that with each other, that can make all the difference. And last but not least, my clients own the space. I'm along for the ride. I'm really there to foster ownership in the space, foster time, foster conversations. Um, I'm not there to drive it, right? I'm not there to be a champion of my own agenda. So much, like we talked about with Judy's statement about independence, so much is already decided in our society for folks with disabilities. I don't need to be that other person that does that too. So, really, I am here to give back agency, to give back space, to give back voice, and um, really to replace that trauma and control, especially that sometimes happens by people in those helper roles that are quote unquote good intention, to really give back the agency and self determination that truly should exist. Um, and so in my sessions and groups, disabled folks have the reins and I'm on the journey with them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how that
Mm-hmm.
works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are some pretty good points.